In this guide, you're going to learn the 10 biggest mistakes low elo players make that hold them back from climbing. My name's Hex, and I'm a multi-season challenger player that's been teaching League of Legends here at Skillcapped for over 10 years. And if there's one thing I've learned in that time, it's that being good at League doesn't require you to master every single detail of the game or have crazy good mechanics. You can see big gains in your rank just by understanding a few simple concepts and fixing a couple of key mistakes that you don't even know you're making. My promise to you is that if you just focus on fixing one or two of the mistakes in this guide, that you will see significant rank gains. How do I know that? Well, taking low-ranked players and getting them results fast is kind of what we specialize in at Skillcapped. Take our course on getting Diamond in 30 days. Over 30 5-star ratings from satisfied customers saying how this one course alone was worth their entire membership. Or take our course on the best way to jungle in solo queue. Perfect 5-star reviews with users saying how this showed exactly why they were stuck at their rank. Or the course on an AD carry strategy that literally got one of our subscribers Diamond with a 70% win rate. We have the largest collection of premium courses tailored for every single role. And the best part is you can try our service completely risk-free. If you don't rank up while actively using Skillcapped, you'll get your money back, no questions asked. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description below to get the rank you've always wanted. All right, now starting with mistake number 1. Tell me if this doesn't sound too familiar. You load up a game of League, realize the enemy laner is a complete bot. You start winning lane thinking to yourself, why am I even stuck in this rank? And 5 seconds later, the enemy jungler arrives for an easy kill, and now you're wondering why you never get junglers like that. Well, this is likely happening because you're on what's called the weak side. In League, wherever a jungler starts, they'll path towards the opposite side of the map. So, for example, let's say the enemy Kayn starts at his blue and your Nocturne starts at his blue. This means each jungler is pathing in the opposite direction. Your jungler is pathing away from you, while the enemy jungler is pathing towards you. When this occurs, it means you're on the weak side, while the side your jungler is pathing to is called the strong side. The enemy jungler gets to path towards you with no threat of your jungler ever coming to counter gank, and so it's incredibly common to be ganked towards the end of their route. There's an easy solution to this though. Every game, watch the minimap once laning starts and pay attention to which side lane arrives to lane the latest. This will tell you they gave their jungler a leash and that he started on that side. Most high-level players memorize 315 to 345 in game. This is because 315 is when a jungler will be finished his full clear and can gank you prior to the 330 scuttle spawn, while 345 is when they'll have finished taking the nearby scuttle and either be recalling or moving to the other side of the map. However, let's be honest, we're not playing in high elo, so for this reason, I just recommend playing safe from 3 to 4 minutes. It's easier to memorize and accounts for the randomness and inefficiency of low elo junglers. Still, that doesn't fully solve the issue around being ganked. I mean, how many times have you heard this before? You need to get the push lead early on. Pushing is amazing. Pushing gets you lane priority. It pins the opponent. Getting push advantage translates to level spikes, all-ins, recall timings. So you're like, okay, I get it. I need to push. You load into the game, start pushing, and one of Riot's super balanced champions just runs you down and kills you like you're nothing. Or the jungler just swings on by to immediately punish you for overextending, probably on a weird timing you can't even predict. Well, the cause of this is usually one simple mistake. Most low elo players will be pushing, winning lane, and so feel safe enough to throw out one of their key abilities to try and land more damage. This is a trap. Don't do this. Instead, identify what the key ability your champion has that helps you disengage and survive, and then just hold on to that while you poke the enemy with your other abilities. So, for example, with Hwei, this could be holding onto your fear while you poke with your other spells. That way, if you get ganked or the enemy tries to engage on you, it's as simple as fearing them and running away. Also, pro tip, time your crowd control when an enemy uses one of their engaged spells. They'll be locked into the animation and be unable to dodge it. I see players make this mistake all the time, like you're playing Ahri and you think, I have my ult, so I'll play super aggressive here looking to land a charm. Then you just end up overextending and having to use that ult to escape. Instead, just look to poke with your Q and hold your charm and even your W for the enemy tries to fight back or if you get ganked. That charm into your W movement speed boost will save you from having to use your ult. Every champion will max their one damage ability first, so in lane, usually the other basic abilities are pretty weak. It's often better to just use your main damage ability for poke and pushing, and then just hold on to the rest of them for disengaging, especially if you're pushed up or overextended. In general, low elo players don't realize how many tools they have available to escape ganks. It's not just about vision or map awareness. I see this one mistake all the time. Here, Aurelion Sol is getting ganked. Let's pause here. I want you to tell me, what is the one key to Aurelion Sol escaping this gank? It's simply running in the opposite direction of the enemy jungler towards the river. Instead, the Aurelion Sol makes the all too common mistake of thinking his only escape route is towards the safety of his tower. When you push up a lane, you have to realize that running towards your tower is rarely going to be a safe path. You often just run towards the jungler, making the gank easier. Here's a great example of Faker using this concept. He's pushed up, and what do you know? A jungler looks to punish him by flashing on him. Again, most players would flash towards their tower, but that just end up being a mistake as they'd get run down their lane. Instead, try to think of the direction that's most optimal opposite of the enemy jungler. It's not the river in this case, but actually flashing into the enemy's jungle. This creates maximum separation, causes the enemy to lose vision, and stops any more damage. Now, don't get me wrong, this ends up working out in the end because Faker was aware his jungler was bot side, and his bot lane had lane priority so they could get to him first. However, still the point is, when Vi first showed, how many of you thought flashing into the enemy's jungle was even an option? This one concept is key to pushing successfully. You have to be aware you don't just have one escape path to your tower. Treat the entire opposite side of where the enemy jungler is ganking from as a viable escape route, and you'll start to realize why you've been dying so much. Now, I know that still doesn't fully solve the problem. In some cases, it won't be enough to deal with some of the champions roaming the rift. I mean, we've all been in the Syndra's shoes, land some good poke, get a big HP lead, feel like you're getting back control of your lane. And just like that, the enemy jungler comes in with a flash engage, and you're sitting there wondering how you're supposed to deal with this. Well, the mistake here is that a lot of players don't understand what a rebound is and just how powerful it can be. When you push a big wave under a tower, like the Syndra, the incoming wave will get stuck on it. When this happens, it causes what's known as a rebound, where the waves will meet much closer to the enemy's tower. Since it's on the enemy's side of the map, the next enemy minion wave will start damaging the wave sooner, causing it to push towards you. So, if we go back, when Syndra is crushing Zed here and got him low in health, she doesn't actually have to keep putting on pressure. If you lack vision or don't know where the jungler is, you can use this moment to actually create a rebound. The wave will push towards you, and you can create a nice freeze in front of your tower. This will force the enemy to move further up the lane to last it, which sets up kills for you. Since they're low, they can't roam without being killed by your teammates, and if they recall, they'll just bleed out minions due to the freeze. Rebounds can create checkmate positions that low elo players aren't even aware is an option. I see this all the time in low elo, where players can actually be decent laners, consistently get leads, but they think the only way to keep getting ahead is just putting on that pressure. You will always have the option to turn your push into a rebound, which then lets you freeze on the enemy. If you lack vision or don't know where the enemy jungler is, just ask yourself, if the jungler ganks me here, can we turn on them and win the fight? If the answer is no, then just try rebounding into a freeze in your next game, and you'll start to realize just how powerful this can be. And speaking of being overextended, here's a mistake I see junglers constantly make when they gank and laners make when they roam. They assume just because someone is overextended and pushed up, it means that ganking them is automatically a good idea. Here's the thing, out of the giant list of things that determine whether ganking or roaming on a lane is a good idea, them being overextended is actually at the bottom of the list. Here's the simple rule you need to follow. Before ganking or roaming on a lane, ask yourself, can I beat them 1v1? If the answer is no, just don't bother. Why? Because you'll be relying on your teammates to play well and help you in order to win the fight, which is a terrible idea in low elo solo queue. Now, don't get me wrong, sometimes you can still try to gank a lane that you can't fully beat by yourself. There's one trick though, you have to wait for your teammates to actually commit to the fight first, so they're being focused and absorbing cooldowns, and guaranteeing you the man advantage in the fight. For example, notice how when this Udyr turns the corner, his teammate isn't close enough to Kai'Sa to help with the gank. He needs to wait and see what Kai'Sa does, and if Yorick is able to catch up to her before he goes in. And since he doesn't use that trick, he effectively gets forced into a 1v1. Sure, could his Yorick have moved in earlier, flashed earlier, landed his abilities better? Of course, and this will always be the case in solo queue. This is why only gank or roam on a lane you can take down by yourself or is in the process of committing to a fight with your teammate. Next is one of the biggest macro mistakes low elo players make. I pretty much see this in every single low elo game, an untouched wave mid while one team goes to take Dragon and the other decides to contest it only to die and get nothing. I mean, it goes without saying you don't have to fight over every Dragon, but this isn't the tip. The tip is that low elo players will always overcommit the amount of players they need to take Dragon, and they leave mid lane wide open. All you have to do is push it and you'll take free towers. Most low elo players don't understand that mid towers are actually the most valuable towers in the game. Destroying them completely opens up the map for you since you can push waves deeper, then you're in the center of the map, you have access to rotations everywhere. You want to look for this play whenever enemies try to take Dragon or even Baron. If you're outnumbered or can't win the fight for whatever reason, just look to push mid. You either take towers or force them to pull off the objective to defend. It's really one of the simplest, most effective macro tactics that goes completely unused by low elo players. Honestly, in general, players overestimate how hard good macro is in low elo. You really only need to know a few core concepts and you'll just run over games. One of those concepts is number advantages. Take a look at this low elo clip. All you have to do is count how many of your teammates are near you compared to how many enemies are near you and missing. So we have Kayn, Thresh, Aurelion Sol near us on this push. That's 3. For the enemy, Akali is mid, 3 are missing, that's 4 enemies. 4 is more than 3, and just like that, you now know pushing here is a bad idea. And what do you know? Here comes the enemy flanking us. Now, I know what you're thinking. I could easily cherry pick a random clip that perfectly shows how blue will lose this fight in order to try and prove my point. Well, let's pause here. Notice how this is technically a 3v3. Also notice how it's incredibly difficult for anyone to predict which team is going to win this fight. Now, as we play it, it does look like red is winning the fight. Then Set and Jinx show up, now it's back to a 3v3. Huge Set ult, looks like red is definitely winning, until Akali just ints it, now it looks even. And what do you know, Senna ults, now Set seems to be inting. Anyways, you get the idea. This is why not playing around number advantages is such a common mistake in low elo. You just don't get clear negative feedback from making this macro mistake, as fights end up being a lot more random and closer than they should be. Here's another example. Notice how if we look at the map, we only have 3 teammates, while 2 are away from us. Meanwhile, all 5 from the enemy team are missing. 5 is greater than 3, and so it's a bad macro play. Well, watch what happens. Yeah, the enemy is just going to randomly int. You can imagine, if you're Jinx or Thresh or Garen in this game, in what world are you going to think, yeah, pushing as 3 here was a mistake? However, they're still pushing as 3, and 4 are still missing. From here, absolute chaos ensues as a Vayne AD carry looks to 1v3 flank. This is just low elo in a nutshell. And as the red team again wins this fight, just watch as the blue team's Aurelion Sol is bot lane the whole time. So what's the takeaway here? Well, firstly, you gotta realize you can't predict how teamfights will go in low elo due to how many players will constantly misplay. For this reason, number advantages are going to be the most effective and consistent way for you to win fights. They're just such a massive advantage that can make up for any of the mechanical misplays. And it's really easy to get number advantage fights in solo queue. All you have to do is if you're ever pressuring the map, look at your minimap, count how many teammates you have nearby and how many the enemy has nearby and are missing. If the number is lower, just back off and play safe. You can just wait for the enemy to overextend, just like the blue team in the clips we showed, and they'll give you those free number advantage fights throughout the game. And of course, if you're pushing and you're the one with the higher number, well, keep pressuring, as often the enemy will still force a fight down numbers trying to defend. Now, once you get a hang of number advantages, really the only other macro concept you need to know to climb out of low elo is going to be the concept of pressure. So take a look at this clip. Volibear teleports top lane, and let's pause. Let's look at our number advantages for both top and mid. So we have 2 teammates mid and 2 enemies mid. Meanwhile, 2 other enemies are missing. With 4 greater than 2, mid should be playing safe and backing off based off of number advantages. If we look at top, we have 1 teammate. Well, again, 2 enemies are missing. 2 is greater than 1, so top should be playing safe and backing off, right? Well, no, and it's because pressure can be the exception to the rule. Notice how when 2 places are being pressured at once, it often results in the enemy team sending multiple players to one area to punish the players there. Meanwhile, you'll still get a lot of value on the other side of the map since they aren't able to send players there to defend it anymore. Also, another important part of this that people always get wrong is that once your other teammates die, you're going to be on a timer where you will have to back off, as now you're the only one pressuring the map and number advantages kick back in as the dominant macro concept to follow. Same concept of pressure here. Teammates are pressuring at Dragon while Volibear pressures top. With 5 enemies missing, both would be bad macro choices by themselves, but when done together, the enemy can only defend 1. We then see that low elo mistake players make when they try and use this pressure concept. Notice again how Volibear's teammates got Dragon for free, no one contested them. So Volibear should adjust and play safe. He can still pressure, but he just needs to hold abilities to disengage and just position more carefully. Instead, he jumps in, and worst of all, when his team already took Dragon. So their pressure is gone, the objective is taken. Now when Volibear dies, his team can't take anything off his pressure to compensate for the shutdown he gave. Exact same concept here. Vayne is going off to farm top lane while her teammates are pressuring mid. This is totally fine and a great use of pressure. However, again, their teammates now back off and they don't adjust. They make the common mistake of not adapting to it and just keep pressuring. Without at least 2 different points of pressure on the map, number advantages will take over, and with the entire enemy team missing and Vayne being by herself, we know this is now a bad macro play. And with this new concept of pressure in mind, let's look back at the earlier clips. Notice how our Garen and Jinx weren't pressuring anything. This is why we calculated the number advantages, and pushing here was wrong. Again, notice how Aurelion Sol and Kayn weren't pressuring anything. This is again why defaults number advantages. If you just follow the simple rule, only pressure the map when you have number advantages or have multiple points of pressure at the same time, and you'll be amazed at how that's all you really need to start stomping your games. Well, almost. There's one more mistake players make when applying these concepts. Check this out. Here we have a team ahead around 2k gold, and you can see them using this concept of pressure just like we taught you. 4 are grouped mid, while 1 is pressuring top. They get the tower, and then after they have 2 pressuring top, while 2 pressure mid, and Rammus hovers nearby mid. You can even see how Rammus was able to get to mid before the enemy jungler to turn it into a 3v2. And yet, the blue team is going to end up losing the fight both in mid lane as well as in top lane. Well, if you're applying these macro concepts of number advantages and pressure and still losing fights, it's likely due to one single reason. You're fighting with lots of unspent gold. I can't begin to tell you how common this is. If we look at the gold before this fight starts, blue is ahead around 2,000 gold. However, when you add together all of their unspent gold, they're currently sitting on around 6,000. Meanwhile, if you add together all of the red team's unspent gold, they're sitting on around 2,500. What this means is that the blue team currently only has around 20,000 gold in items. Meanwhile, the red team has around around 21,000 gold in items. So despite the blue team being ahead in overall gold, red team is actually the one stronger at this time of the fight. Just remember that number advantages and pressure, they will only work if you make sure to spend your gold. If your team is sitting on a lot of unspent gold, it's unlikely any macro concept will work in your favor, as it's such a big disadvantage. And for our final mistake low elo players make is that low elo players don't understand how to end games when they're ahead. Time and time again, I'll see one team get a big lead, it's well past 20 minutes, and they keep pushing lanes, only for the enemy team to easily defend at their towers. They can't just straight up tower dive, or they end up throwing, so they end up kind of just doing nothing. And to be honest, usually all this pushing actually causes people to make that simple number advantage macro mistake we covered earlier, and so they end up throwing their lead. As a general rule, it's safe to assume you're not going to be able to end a game by pushing if you don't have a Baron buff. Here's the thing though, most players do eventually realize the pushing isn't working, and at some point actually go to take Baron. The problem is the enemy team just collapses on them while they're low in health, clean up the fight, steal Baron, causing a huge throw. So here's the trick. Once you have a good lead, and it's later into the game, usually minimum past around 25 minutes, instead of wasting your time trying to throw your lead pushing, you want to force Baron. However, don't do this with the intent of actually finishing the Baron. It's actually completely fine to just start Baron even if it's warded. Your main goal should be to bait the enemy into reacting and trying to contest it. You then turn on them once they're in range, and the reason this works is that you have a big lead, right? And so any kind of even numbered fight is very likely to go in your favor at this point in the game. Baiting Baron like this, it will lure the enemy team away from the safety of their towers and usually forces them to fight right out in the open. It's only once you've then won the fight, you can turn back, finish the Baron, which then makes pushing a viable way of ending the game. There's two key ways to making this work. First, have a tank at Baron that won't get too low from starting it. And second, don't spend too much time tanking Baron if the enemy is trying to contest. Only attack the Baron for like 5 to 10 seconds, then reset before either your team or the Baron itself gets too low in health, since it could be stolen. Most low elo players don't realize that baiting Baron is actually one of the most common macro tactics players use to win games. If the enemy team doesn't react, it's a free Baron for you, and if the enemy does react, well, you just turn on them for a winning fight. Alright, and now you know the 10 biggest mistakes low elo players make that hold them back from climbing. If you're feeling stuck where you just can't rank up no matter how hard you try, then Skill-Capped is the solution you've been looking for. We have the most extensive collection of premium League of Legends courses tailored for every single role. If you're skeptical, don't worry. You can try us out completely risk-free. If you don't rank up while you actively use our service, you'll get your money back. No questions asked. You can unlock this game-changing opportunity right now through the link below. So what are you waiting for? Click the link to get the rank you've always wanted. Alright, and that will wrap things up. We here at Skill-Capped want to thank you for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.